I don't know how it was that recently I started wondering what was the game that I played the most in my life. Was it Settlers of Catan, which I played a lot in the past? Was it Pandemic, which also I played a lot? Was it some big meaty war game? And then I realized that the answer was hidden in plain sight. It was a game that I played almost daily before I became a gamer, before I became the sort of like person heavily involved in the hobby, the kind of person that belongs to the kind of culture that we identify as the gamer culture. When I was still a normal person playing games, and when I was a child growing up in northern Italy, the game that I played the most was Scopa. Scopa in Italian literally means broom, and that is the correct usage of the word literally. Means broom, and it is a card game that is played all over Italy in different versions. There are many variants of the game. Also, the art on the cards varies from region to region. It is a game that is played all over Italy, and it's played also in other countries where there is an Italian community, for example, in Brazil or in the United States. Why making a video about Scopa? Well, first, just to share my love for this game, which actually is a very good game. Heavily involved as I was with the gamer culture, I forgot that I knew how to play this game, and actually I like it very much. I want to go back to playing more Scopa. I taught it to my wife, and she likes it very much. In the future, I'll teach it to my daughters. It's just a very simple, fun, deep, abstract card game. But why making a video about this? And first, just to share the love, but also because I think that it is a fun game, and if you're not Italian, you may not know about this game. For my Italian viewers, it'd be like if I were filming a video explaining what pizza is or how to play soccer. For the English-speaking audience, maybe this is a game that you don't know yet. And once you know it, then you can easily purchase a deck of Scopa cards online, on eBay. There are a lot of copies floating around. Or simply, if you don't want to invest in that, then once you know the rules, you can play with any regular deck of cards, like with a deck of poker cards, which means if you're carrying a regular deck of cards with you and you know the rules, you always have the option of playing Scopa. So let me show you how the game plays, and I'll try to give you some ideas, hits and tips about strategy and what's really going behind the rules, which are pretty simple, pretty linear, but they do amount to some interesting strategy. Scopa. Scopa is played with a deck of 40 cards divided in 4 suits: coins, cups, clubs, and swords. And the art that I'm showing you here is of the Piacentine style. There are different styles of cards with different art, but the general rules are the same. Generally speaking, as I said earlier, different regions and different people play slightly different versions. I'm going to teach you the version, or say versions that I know. I don't know if they're of any sort of official kind. They simply are the rules that I played with my grandpa and my dad and my mom, and that's good enough for me. 4 suits and the cards that go from 1 to 10. Now, cards from 1 to 7, as you can see, simply indicate the number, the value, by the number of symbols that they show you. 6 of coins, 7 of cups, 3 of coins. From 8 to 9, you have figures. You have these 4 lads here, fante in Italian, which are worth 8. So here we have the 8 of coins. These knights, in Italian though they're called cavallo, so horse, they're worth 9. And then you have 4 queens, which are worth 10. Which means that you can play Scopa with any standard deck of cards if you simply replace the 8, 9, and 10 with the jack, the queen, and the king, or the jack, the king, and the queen, but maybe that would be a little confusing. Even easier, you take a standard deck of cards, you remove jack, queen, and king, and you simply play with the numerical values ace 1 all the way up to 10. Now, at the beginning of the game, you shuffle all of the cards together. This is a very generic and insufficient shuffle. But once you shuffle the cards, then you will reveal 4 cards face up. You put them there in the middle of the table, visible for every player, and then you will give a hand of cards to each player. And this is where you have possible variants based on the number of cards that you distribute. In the most classic version, you give a hand of 3 cards to each player and leave the deck there. The idea is that players during their turn will have to play a card face up in the middle of the table. Once their hands are empty, then you replenish them with a hand of an equal number of cards. Repeat playing, repeat giving them cards until the deck is exhausted. Once the deck is exhausted and all cards have been played, you score points, you tally points based on how players did. And then you repeat the procedure until one of the players or teams of players reaches the total amount of victory points agreed on at the beginning of the game. Most games, traditionally you play them up to 11 victory points, first player to go to 11 wins. You can also play to 16 or 21 for longer games. I said that the hand of cards matters because you can play a game in which every time players receive a hand of 3 cards, you can play with 4 cards. You can also play with 2 or 4 players by handing out 9 cards to each player. Which means that 9 and 9 is 18 if you're playing with 2 players. Once you hand out the first hand of cards to the 2 players, half of the deck is out, which means that the players know a lot of what is not in the deck anymore. And as they're playing and seeing what the opponent has, by the time you're handing out the second hand to each player, then each player will get a pretty good sense of what is still available, what the opponent can have in their hand. Later you may have absolute knowledge of what the opponent has and has not, which means that you have more planning that is available to you, more scheming that you can do. With a hand of 3 cards that is given to you, you have more limited knowledge of what may be still out there, and you have more limited maneuver. So the higher the number of cards that you give, the more the strategy and the less the luck. The higher the luck with the smaller hands of cards. But somehow, even though it's say, well, then you're serious gamers always play with 9 cards, there is a charm in playing with the 3 cards and just dealing with whatever fatalistically you have received. There's conversation that goes on, laughter, personal attacks, but all in jest and friendly banter. So what happens here? You have your hand of, suppose, 3 cards. Suppose that this is my hand, and my opponent has, say, this hand here. Now, when it is your turn, what you're doing is simply you play a card from your hand face up. If the card matches the numerical value of any card, one card on the table, you have to capture it. So you put it on top there, you remove both the card that you just played and the one that you match, and you put it face down in your score pile. If there are multiple samples of the same card, for example, I play a 4 and there are 2 4s, then I choose the one that I want, and in this case I want to get the 4 of coins because I like the 4s of coins, for reasons I will explain. However, it may also happen that the card that you play matches the sum of multiple cards on the board. For example, here 5 and 4 is 9. If I play a 9, then I'm capturing both of these cards and bringing home my own card. See, in this case, suppose that I had a 10 in my hand, that would have been pretty nice. Where are the queens? Where are the queens when you need them? Suppose that I had a 10, it would have been pretty nice to be 5 and 4 is 9 and 1 is 10. But when you have multiple options between a sum of cards and an individual match, because this is a 10, then you have to take the individual match. So you're able to take a sum of cards only if there is no option for equal matches. But if this would be the situation, I'd be able to capture all of these 3 cards. In this case also, if this is the situation when it is my turn to play, I play this card, I capture all of these cards. It's also particularly sweet because, as you can see, I swept the table. I didn't leave any card there. This is called Scopa, fire Scopa, performing the broom action, sweeping. When you sweep the table and there's no card left there, you put all of the cards that you just captured in your discard pile, as usual, face down, but then you take one and you place it face up in your score pile. This to record that you did perform the Scopa. So every time that you sweep the table, then after this is the situation, the opponent played that card. Good for me, I have a 5. So here we go, another Scopa. Every time that you do Scopa, you will place a card there. You're recording the number of times that you managed to perform that action. Which means, remember, once you play a card, and you have to play a card each turn, you have to capture cards that match the individual match or the sum. Which means sometimes you are forced to capture cards when you don't want to, because by then capturing some cards, you're leaving a low value on the table, which your opponent may capture and perform a Scopa. Scopa is worth a victory point. Each time you perform a Scopa, you get a victory point. Remember, the maximum card is 10, which means ideally you're always trying to capture cards without leaving a total amount on the table which is lower than 10. If I'm here, I captured the 8, that's great. The sum is higher than 10. Then my opponent plays a 3, that's great. He captured a 3. Now it's tricky because if I capture a 6, then the opponent may capture the 5 and get a Scopa. If I capture the 5, he may get the 6. So here's when knowledge of what the opponent has or may have in their hand is key, because if I get a sense that the opponent doesn't have a 6, or maybe I'm certain that the opponent doesn't have one, then I may take my chances and grab the 5 anyways. If I don't feel comfortable, don't want to take my chances, then I will have to play another card from my hand, simply trying to, simply skipping my turn if you so wish. The technical term is ballare, I'm dancing. I'm just dancing around without doing much. So if you're ballando, if you're dancing, you play a card without capturing anything, which sometimes you do on purpose, even if you could capture something. But then you may get stuck in a situation where this is what is on the table, and in my hand I only have 2 cards, a 6 and a 5. Or I have a 5 and a 6, then I'm stuck there. I have to choose what I want to do. Maybe I only have 2 5s, then I'm forced to take the 5, I'm forced to give you the chance of a Scopa. Now let's talk about the end of the round. A round is over when all players have played all cards. And in a round, the last player to capture anything also gets to capture all cards that are still left on the table at the end of the round. Suppose that this is towards the end of a round, we only have one player left with one card to play, and that will be the player who dealt the cards. The player who dealt the cards also goes last to play cards. So this is the last card of the round. That player captures a 7 and a 2 with a 9, and then the player also captures these cards because they have been left there at the end of the round. But when you are cleaning the table at the end of the round because you are the player who captured a card last, that doesn't count as a Scopa, still goes in your discard pile. So if you're the player who dealt the cards, you're going to go last. You may want to save a high card for last and a card that according to your calculations is still around, is likely to be profitable. How you do that? Well, you'll figure it out after you play the game a bit. The subtleties of keeping a high cards, or keeping not just a high card, but a high card that is good and gives you better chances of getting the final sweep. So as the last player, usually will try to do that to keep a good card for last. As the second to last player, you may still want to do something like that, because actually if you manage to do that, suppose that this is the play of the second to last player, 7 and 2 is 9. Then the last player goes, plays a sorry 9, doesn't capture anything, then the second to last gets to grab all of these. In any case, once all cards have been assigned to score piles, it is time to start scoring points. You score a point immediately for any Scopa that you may had. I had 2 Scopas, that's 2 points. Then the player with the most cards, which is with 21 or more cards in their score pile, scores 1 point for the amount of cards. Then there's a point for the player with the majority of coins. If you have 6 coin cards in your score pile, you score a point. These 2 points, if which is cards and coins, if there is a tie, nobody gets that point. Another point is simply for the most precious cards in the deck, which is the 7 of coins. It is of such importance that it has a special name that is called the sette bello. The beautiful 7, and beautiful it is, the sight of this 7 when you play Scopa. Looking at that 7 is one of the most beautiful things. It can also be pretty scary if you get that 7 in your hand and then you're stuck with it and without a way of bringing it back home, because maybe the situation is such that you never find quite the right combination of cards. I can't play that 7, that'd be silly, because I would be leaving it there for other people to capture. Then I'm gonna play that. And the opponent plays something else, which still doesn't give me the chance of capturing anything. So the sette bello is great and beautiful to see if you see in your hand also a way of likely being able to bring it in your score pile. Otherwise, of course, if you're forced to dance a 7, then you're just leaving it there for potential capture. Unless maybe the opponent also cannot capture it, and then next hand of cards you will get a chance of capturing it. But when the sette bello is on the table, then things get really interesting, because the sette bello by itself is worth a single victory point. I mentioned 3 of the 4 standard points that are scored each turn, 1 for most cards, 1 for most coins, 1 for sette bello, the beautiful 7 of coins. There's a 4th point which is scored every time you're scoring points, which is called Primiera, often translated in English as prime. It is probably the only tricky thing in the entire game for new players, but I'm gonna teach you the simplified version, then the official version, and then probably you'll end up playing the way I play, which is sort of like a official played in an intuitive way. As for the simplified version, you want to start playing Scopa immediately, easy. Then when you're scoring Primiera, you produce you produce a set of 4 cards, 1 per suit, trying to produce as many 7 as you can, filling that as many 6s as you can, filling that as many 1s as you can. For the purposes of Primiera, 7 are the most valuable cards, 6 are next, 1s are next, and then the other cards in a specific order. Which means if you have all 4 7, you have locked your Primiera. Other than that, things may become a little trickier, and the simplified version says that if there is a tie for the 7, then you look at the player who has the most 6s. So Primiera in the simplified version goes to whoever has the most 7. With that, if that is a tie, whoever has the most 6s. If that is a tie, whoever has the most 1s, and so on and so forth. The official version is a little different, but before I move there, remember you have to place 1 per kind, 1 per suit, which means I may have this, which is a beautiful 6, but is useless because I have a better card, so I'm using the 7 of coins. If I have these 2 cards, I'm gonna use the 6 of clubs instead of the 1, which also means as you're playing, you're trying to capture as many 7s, 6s, and 1s as possible, because those are good for Primiera. And also you're trying maybe to deny cards to the opponent, because I know unless what I have, the chances I have, I'm gonna try to capture 6s, and even if 6s, say of coins and cups, even if I had the 7, because I don't want you to have the 6s. So If you're playing the official version, however, technically you need to do a little bit of mathematics. In terms of Primiera, 7 is the most valuable card because it's worth 21 points. 6 is worth 18 points. These are not victory points, or let's call them Primiera points. The 6s are worth 18, the 1s are worth 16, and the other cards are worth less. So you can see 5, 15, 4, 14, 3, 13, 2, 12. So it's pretty easy to remember. 10 is 10. So it's pretty easy to remember. You only have to remember these 3 values. Technically, you get there, say, okay, I have 21 and 42 and 15, etc., etc. This will be the official version. Now, the simplified version in most cases will work. If it's just you're playing with somebody who has played a lot, with Italians, they may come up with a combination that they will show you that even if you have the majority of 7, but you have nothing in the 4 suit, with a strong combination of other cards of other suits, you may still win. So maybe you have 3 6s, or you have 4 6s, and the opponent has 3 7 and nothing in that category, then with 4 6s, or you may win. So in most cases, the most 7, more 6s, more 1 works. If you're playing with Italians, they may sometimes call for the calculation of the actual points. What is the version that I play? Is this one without counting. Once you play the game enough hundreds of hours, then you simply look at the board, you look at the card. I said board, oh my gosh, that's after playing all the board games. You look at the cards, like, okay, I have it, you have it, oh come on, I have only a 3 in that 4 suit, there's no way we need to count points. I believe that in the countless hours that I spent playing Primiera, we actually came down to counting points this way maybe 4 or 5 times in years of play. Doesn't come up all that often. It may come up though, so keep this player aid at hand, or otherwise just simply learn it because it's really not that hard to remember. But also be reassured that the basic version will work in most cases, and even if you are decided to play with the real official version, you will not need to actually start crunching numbers in most cases. So you total all of the points, Primiera, cards, coins, sette bello, plus possible Scopas. You record the points that each player scored. You play another hand until one of the players reaches the total amount of victory points that has been agreed on at the beginning of the game, and that player, of course, is the winner of the game. I realized that I wanted to make a review about Scopa, but probably ended up having a bit of a documentary. Nevertheless, I wanted to give you a little more detail, to give you a sense of how a game that is this simple, matching individual cards or matching sums, actually has a lot going on, like many simple abstract games. And if you don't have somebody maybe showing you all of the possibilities, then it may take a long time, like it did me, to really see them. I played Scopa when I was a child, and then just figuring out that 6 and 2 is 8 was tough enough, let alone discovering all the subtleties of keeping a high card towards the end if you're the last player, and trying to prevent the last player from capturing everything if you are the second to last to play a card in a certain hand. Remembering the cards, trying not to leave less than 10 than a total 10 points on the table unless you have a reason for doing so, because you think the opponent will not score Scopa anyways, or maybe you're forced to do so. Also remember the cards that have been around, because if the opponent did perform a Scopa, then you're left with an open table. You can play only a card, which means any card that you're going to play is not going to be over 10. Any card that you're playing can potentially trigger another Scopa. Yeah, you may have a string of Scopas that sometimes is very rare, may simply score an opponent 5, 6 points, like that. Usually players, even if you win a game that way, you will not feel like you're the moral winner. You're not given moral victory. Lady Fortune will receive congratulations for winning the game. Italians will not say, oh, what a great gamer, what a great player you are. it's obvious that when things like this happens, it's one of those rare cases when Lady Fortune is taking over the game. In many of the cases, it is up to you to mitigate that by trying to remember what is out and trying to figure out what the opponent may have in their hand. Even after those occasional moments of mess somehow, mess given to luck, given to a string of Scopas one after the other, somehow add to the folksy aspect of the game, which is a game that has a lot of thinking, but that takes into account the fact that reality, nature is something unpredictable. It is really, to me, the farmer's game. As a farmer, you need to know about space, you need to know about quantities, you need to plan ahead, you need to work toward nature to kind of try to control it to an extent, but you are aware that a storm may simply take away all the careful planning and work that you did. In that sense, the fact that nature and fortune can indeed mess up the game entirely, to me works when we're talking about a game that is so traditional, so popular, that I know has been played for centuries by people in the mountains, people in farms. That's how we played it on the farm in long winter evening nights. Just thinking about Scopa brings back some very sweet memories of a time and a country which is very far away. But the game is still here, and you can still play it, and even if you didn't grow up on the Alps, you can still enjoy it. You will enjoy it for different reasons, with a different flavor. As long as you are okay with a certain degree of luck, which again, you can choose the amount of luck that you want to deal with. But I do believe that the fact that occasional luck does overwhelm the situation, and people somehow accept that, is one of the reasons behind the fascination for the three card version. Overall, if you want to play it in a more technical thing, again, just in a more thinky way, play with a lot of cards in your hand, and you will have a game that is indeed pretty deep. Again, between counting cards, memorizing, trying to figure out what the opponents have, planning traps, setting up situations in which you're presenting a juicy situation on the table that maybe will attract the opponent into scoring a certain amount of points, capturing certain cards, but leaving a good situation for you on the board. There's a lot of that unspoken conversation that goes on as players are trying to figure out what everybody has in their hand and what everybody is trying to do. A lot of wrinkles, a lot of angles, a lot of subtleties. After, this is a game that I really enjoy. It plays fast. The amount of choices that you have is limited. You only have one action, but you have to choose which card you want to play to it, and there's a lot that you have to take into account when you're deciding the one card that you're going to play. So this is Scopa. This is the traditional Italian game, and I'm glad I had this idea of sharing my love for and knowledge of Scopa with you, because it really is a fun game that you can play anywhere with any standard deck of cards, and a game that has a lot to it to offer, more than meets the eye. It's great that you can play with any deck of cards that you have around. You can play tonight, but let's face it, if you decide to invest a couple of bucks and you buy a traditional Italian deck, it just feels better. It's just different. And there are many different variants of the art, so you can choose the type of Scopa cards that appeal the most to you. Scopa, the traditional Italian game. Millions of Italians playing Scopa for centuries cannot be completely wrong, can they? Italians can be wrong about a lot of things, but not about Scopa, I believe.